I am delighted and honored to welcome you to our 6th Consultative Forum on Coffee Sector Finance. The Consultative Forum was established under the International Coffee Agreement of 2007 in order to facilitate consultation on matters related to the coffee sector. This was an innovative feature of the agreement, and it was done in order to enhance our efforts at ICO to promote sustainable expansion, so that by using market-based principles we could promote the betterment of all participants in the world coffee sector. And we have, in the course of various events, explored a number of challenges which face the coffee sector, more particularly small and medium-sized coffee farmers. Previous topics include mechanisms or tools that can be used to help small and medium-sized farmers to manage the risk of price volatility, the role of farmers' associations in making risk management more accessible to small and medium-sized coffee farmers, the identification of best practices and the dissemination of information to members about aggregation as a platform through which access to finance and risk management can be more effectively reduced, bridging the gap between farmers and finance, and how to effectively structure projects in order to obtain financing. So, as I've said, this is the 6th forum in our series, and we do intend to continue to organize these events, facilitating direct exchanges between experts and stakeholders by contributing to the sustainability of the sector. And we do intend to explore how these issues can be tackled by industry in a holistic manner, how we can fairly and evenly distribute the value arising from the coffee sector and the costs which are required to address these issues. I'd like to thank our chairman, Mr. Juan Esteban Orduz, for his efforts in organizing today's program and developing the range and scope of the forum. And I'd also like to thank all those panelists and speakers for their participation. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. And good morning to you all. Welcome to our 6th Consultative Forum for Coffee Sector Finance. Now, much of this forum will be conducted in English. However, we do have interpretation facilities, and I intend to address my introductory remarks to you in Spanish before we get down to practicalities. The title of the forum, as the Executive Director has been explaining, is Global Challenges and Co-Responsibility, Joint Responsibility. I don't mean by that who's responsible and who's liable or guilty, but the fact that we all share responsibilities in taking up the challenges faced by coffee growers today, not just in financial and commercial terms or in terms of distribution or environment or economic matters, but how do we ensure that the coffee chain, the production chain, works well at each link, at each stage, more particularly in terms of economic sustainability for the coffee grower. We continue to talk about environmental and social sustainability, but not so much about the economic front. And we can do that visually so that they can go to the shop and send their children to school. These basics, and that is really the focus, the thrust of this forum. We are all jointly responsible. If the world in 2030 is going to 180 to 200 million bags of coffee, that memes we have to produce another Brazil. And with the way things stand today, really, who, how, where is that coffee the market needs going to be produced? And that's a question we've all got to think about, not just in terms of sustainability for the coffee farmer, but that's what's going to guarantee supplies for the industry at the end of the day. How is industry going to get hold of the coffee it needs when it needs it, the qualities that it requires, which the market is demanding. So it's in the interest of all of us to be responsible, to be jointly or co-responsible for all of this when talking about sustainability. In the course of the discussions, if Colombia were to produce 1 million bags today because of climate change or lose them, that's 200,000. Who's going to pay for that? How do we ensure that that doesn't go on happening so that we can tackle the cause and so that we can ensure, well, at the end of the day, who bears the cost, the brunt? Is this going to have an effect on the income of the coffee farmer? So these are the issues we face today, and I think that we've got some very interesting panelists and moderators. I'm going to introduce the moderators because the moderator will then introduce the panelists for their particular panel. And we have arranged the day so that we move from the general to the particular. And the first panel, therefore, deals with tackling challenges in coffee growing. So we have Mr. Piotr Krawczyk. I'm not sure, pardon my pronunciation, but I hope that's right, of Poland. He's an expert from the Department of International Cooperation, the Ministry of Economic Development in Poland. Panel 2, socio-economic indicators. Where's Nancy? There you are. There you are, our moderator, Mrs. Nancy Cheriot of Kenya. She'll be moderating. There will come onto the details more of various countries. Panel 3, co-responsibility, joint responsibility for climate change. And that will be moderated by Mr. Primus Kimario, Director General of the Tanzania Coffee Board. Panel 4, international prices. We have a group of experts there. The moderator is Mr. Ronald Peters, the Executive Director of the Costa Rican Coffee Institute. Panel 5, finally, financial mechanisms for coffee producers. And that will be moderated by Mr. Alfredo Moises, the CEO of Café Monte Grande of Mexico. So they'll be dealing with sourcing finance in the field. As I said, it's very interesting. The Crop Trust, I met them in Bonn. That's an organization which has the overall remit of organizing and funding diversity programs, conservation. I'm sure you'll correct me, Brian, if I'm wrong, but they look at samples and gather samples across the world, and they're looking at coffee at the moment. They've got some very impressive installations in Norway. With an eye to the future, they're trying to collect samples to ensure diversity of their samples from across the world, and they're turning their attention to coffee at the moment. Anyway, moving on to the nitty-gritty, the logistics. There are 5 panels, each of which has a moderator. The moderator will make a very short opening statement of 3 minutes maximum, introducing the subject, the topic to be covered, and the panelists. Each panelist can then have 3 minutes, a few minutes, to set out their position before the discussion. So that should take 15 minutes, and then we'll have approximately 40 minutes of 35-40 minutes of discussion. Q&A will be at the very end of the day, and we want to get through the topics which we think are very relevant, and then have Q&A at the end. One further point is, please, anyone who is speaking, panelist, moderator, or anyone in the audience, please moderate your speed so that the interpreters can keep up with you. Thank you very much. Don't speak as fast as I do, says the chairman. At the end of the day, as I said, we'll have a Q&A session, and then there'll be a networking event, which basically boils down to having a glass of wine, which the Colombian Coffee Growers Federation is offering, and so that we can all have a chance to chat, to meet people, panelists, ICO, staff, and the audience. So I don't know, unless the executive director has anything else to say, I think we can make a start. So, Piotr and panelists. No, I'm so sorry. I had forgotten. We have a presentation first from the head of operations at the ICO. It's, as you can see, entitled Assessing the Economic Viability of Coffee Growing. It will just take a couple of minutes, and then we will make a start.
Okay. Muchísimas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you very much, Chairman. As the Chairman just said, I very quickly, in 10 minutes, I'm going to present the results of a study that was done, and it is to be put to the Council. It's assessing the economic viability of coffee growing. So first of all, we're looking at the motivation. The study, what we wanted from it was to examine what is happening as a result of coffee price and recent developments with prices, and what underlies this over the past 10 years, and this below average figure. So on the graph you can see that from 2000 to 2015 you can see the international coffee prices, and on the red line at the end you can see that actually from March 2015 up until now the international price is below the average for the previous 10 years. So this situation led us to ask ourselves, what is actually happening with production and the producers? Certainly the producers are facing a whole series of restrictions, liquidity constraints, and they are manifest both in the short and long term. In the short term, there's an insufficient use of inputs to be able to invest in production, and on the long term, what is most worrying is that there is a lack of investment. The coffee producers are not investing in maintaining their coffee fields and in replanting. The chairman of the forum will say at the end of the day we're going to discuss this is going to have an effect on the livelihoods of smallholders, and we have to consider what can be done. What alternatives of co-responsibility throughout the whole coffee producing chain can be introduced to improve the situation. But it doesn't stop here. It's not just a question of the producers that are facing a complicated situation, but to a certain extent, from what they can produce, this means there is a shortage in our supply. and we have to meet demand. So we all enjoy our coffee in the morning, but there's a lot behind it. So here's a methodology and the data. We wanted to assess the profitability of coffee production, analyzing in detail the different aspects, and we're looking at the difference between profits, revenues, and variable costs. Where we had access to the data of association, looking at fixed costs of installation and maintenance of plantations, this is where we looked for information. The data covers 4 countries: Brazil, Colombia, Costa Rica, and El Salvador. And we did the study over a period of 10 years. That is from 2006-2007 up until 2015-2016. So now very briefly I'm going to try and show you the results that we got per country. This is a kind of case-by-case study. So on the graph, you can see the relationship between costs, revenues, and operating profits. And you can see that per hectare, you can see that the Colombian producers are making minimum profits over the past 3 years, particularly when you bear in mind the actual costs that are associated with farming and also with exchange rates. The conditions for producers are, as you can see, so over the past, or over the 10 years of analysis, it's only for 4 years that the Colombian producers are actually making positive returns. So it's important to mention here that Colombia was successful in its recovery program, that is, recovering from the crisis from coffee rust. Then we move on to Costa Rica, and you can see here that Costa Rica is in a more complicated situation compared to Colombia. You can see also that although production per hectare is more stable for Costa Rica, but what has been affected substantially is that the producers have had to face a growing trend in costs, and this has led to operational deficits over recent years. In El Salvador, we can see again that very low profits, losses that are fairly large over the past 4 years, basically due to a very severe attack because of rust in the coffee plantations in El Salvador. So this is different, of course, to the situation in Colombia. So Salvador couldn't manage to implement sustained recovery in view of this pest. In Brazil, here we have interesting information. We've got the major municipalities that produce coffee, and also we received information that allowed us to do differentiated analysis between Arabica and Robusta. And what we have now is information on the production of Arabica coffee, and we find that during the analysis period there was a consistent increase in production costs due to productivity in Brazil, which did lead to positive results, thanks to that fact that they did end up positive. So cost efficiency is related to high productivity. For Robusta coffee, the data is not as thorough as it is for Arabica, but here also you can see how costs over the 10 years of the study have increased, because the situation is fairly complicated. The major conclusion of this limited sampling of 4 countries is that there are areas that are in better conditions for being able to face market price cycles, and they manage to sustain their profits and even increase their profits and their productivity per hectare. And there are others in which, unfortunately, the situation it doesn't really lead to much hope. So there is a doubt as to what the effect of this situation will be, and we might also imagine that with movements like this in coffee production into areas where regions are more able to face these negative cycles and can produce more per hectare, and also are able to handle their production more efficiently. So here on this graph we have a comparison of the 4 countries that we covered in the study, and what we find is that over the 10-year period, given the ICO composite price, we got 1.45%, the ICO composite indicator price, and these countries are well above this, particularly in Brazil. They had 8.49% increases, Colombia 5.54%, Costa Rica almost 6%, and El Salvador almost 3%. It is important to note that this analysis is very sensitive to the way in which these averages are calculated. So we should bear in mind that over the past 4 years, that is 2011-2015, that coffee growers suffered a drop of 8.4% in prices, combined with substantial increases in production costs. So this is very difficult for coffee growers. It's difficult for them to create a buffer that will allow them to effectively face the market cycles and market impacts. Now, looking at costs and cost increase, again, increased labor costs. So the coffee grower has to pay more labor costs for their labor force. There's also rising trend in the cost of agrochemical inputs, and therefore there is a need to improve production per hectare and also generate, or rather this gives rise to generating higher costs. And this leads to a situation where we have the impact of exchange rate fluctuations, as well as imported assets, fertilizers, machinery, and this, of course, would have an effect on the different currencies in the different countries, and this will have an impact on costs. Recommendations, first of all, at farm level, it is important that we need to provide farmers with tools to mitigate price risks, and one way or another to strengthen resilience against shocks. At country level, again, this type of event has a major advantage of contributing towards these issues, because there is a need to share experience between countries on how some manage to benefit from what has been done well in others, successful national policies. The next steps to be taken, the ICO will continue its work on economic viability for coffee. We're going to create areas for discussion, forum function, and also nurture these fora by giving opportunities to talk about this and promote an exchange between countries on best practices. And also we're going to create a research area in collaboration with IFPRI, which is the Institute of Food Policy Research, on topics such as volatility. But it is important, of course, to get more and better data. Thank you very much for your attention.